So hello friends, welcome to my channel, and in this video we're going to talk about object typecasting in Java part 2, where we will be covering the remaining conclusions. So let's start. So friends, in the last video we got to know that if there is no parent-child relationship between the typecasting objects, then the code will not compile. So if you haven't watched my previous video till now, then you can check the video from there. Now once the first compilation check is done, it will go for the next compilation check. Now this fruit object is treated as a fruit entity. Now once the fruit object has been typecasted to fruit type, the whole entity will be treated as fruit object. Now the question arises whether the left hand side variable will be able to hold this fruit object or not. So what is our left hand side variable? It is itself fruit type. So obviously the fruit type reference variable can hold the fruit type object. That means there will be no compilation issue. So let's see in the editor. So friends, basically we are taking the same example here. In the last video, I have explained this code, and if you have not watched the previous video, then the link is in the description. You can check that out, and then you can come over to this video. So let me comment this code, and we have already explained why there was compilation issue in the last video, right? Let me compile this code. Say, happily, the code compiled fine, because in the first line, what's happening? The vegetable object is being referred by this fruit type reference variable. And then the food and fruit, these both have a parent-child relationship. So there is no compilation issue. Now this whole entity is referred as fruit object. And this fruit object is referred by this same fruit reference variable. The same class variable is referring to the same object. So there is no compilation issue. You see, the code compiles happily. Now let's say if you are having the same fruit object on the right hand side and it is being referred by a different class reference variable, let's say vegetable class reference variable. So will there be any compilation issue? Think about that. So if you have think correctly, then yes, there will be a compilation issue, because as I have already mentioned many times that the right hand side is fruit object and left hand side is fruit vegetable variable. So there is a direct relationship between vegetable and fruit. We can differentiate between vegetable and fruit. So obviously there will be a compilation issue. So let's check in the editor, okay? So let's say instead of writing fruit, let's say we are writing vegetable class variable pointing to fruit class object. You can see immediately the ID itself is pointing out that there is a compilation issue. Still, I will show you the compilation error message in the terminal. You can see. Okay, so I actually haven't saved the file, so it's actually running the previous code. Yes, and okay. Let's run it again. You can see incompatible types again. It's same as previous code error, but this is the second compilation issue. The first compilation error was for different reason. It was the typecasting issue. But the second compilation error was because of assignment. You can see the fruit cannot be converted to vegetable because in the right hand side there is fruit object and we cannot assign a different class object to a different class. And a different class variable cannot hold the reference of a different class object. It's so simple. Now here in the first case, we were assigning this same class object to the same class variable. In the second case, we were assigning the different class object to a different class variable, which led to compilation issue. Now in the third case, if we took suppose the same fruit object, but we can obviously assign, but assigning to the parent class variable. So obviously parent class reference variable can hold the object of child class. Yes, again the same concept, loose coupling, that parent class object can hold the reference of its own type and also its own child type. So let's again check in the editor. So basically in place of a vegetable type, I will write food type. Okay, let me save this. Okay, so why it's showing compilation issue? Okay, this is actually same. I'm assigning the reference variable name is same actually. Let me say food1. Okay, so there's no compilation issue, and let me compile it again. So you can see there's no compilation issue again because the reference variable is parent type and it's holding the fruit type object. And it's holding the fruit type object which is its own child type. So friends, what is our second conclusion? The second conclusion is, while assigning, if the compiler don't find any parent-child relationship between the reference variable and the runtime object, then it will raise the compile time error. And the compile time error is same as the first compile time error, that is in the conclusion 1, that is incompatible types. But that compilation error was for different reason, and this compilation error is for different reason. So by now, you know the difference, right? Tell me, are we clear? So let me summarize these two conclusions quickly. So if there exists any parent-child relationship or child-parent relationship between these two, then only the typecasting is possible, or else we will get the compilation error as incompatible types, as we see in the conclusion 1. In the second conclusion, this whole right-hand side object, the whole right-hand side will be treated as the fruit object. Now it will check that if the left-hand side reference variable can hold the right-hand side object or not. If it can hold, then the compilation will be done happily, or else we will get the same compilation error, that incompatible types. Now friends, whatever conclusion we have evaluated till now, it is being checked by the compiler. The third conclusion will be checked by the JVM itself. Now friends, carefully see the first line. Food is equal to new vegetable. So what JVM will understand? The food reference variable is pointed to the vegetable object. So the internal object is vegetable. Till now, your compiler, that means your mom, was checking everything. That means your mom was going to kitchen and whatever object she was holding, after those objects gets pre-checked by her, and then only it was served to you. Now what you will do? You are the JVM. Yes. Now suppose suddenly your mood changed and you want having some fruits instead of vegetables. But whatever my mom has brought is actually vegetable, not fruits. So immediately you will raise the query that mom, I want some fruits, not vegetable. Now friends, one small request, if you haven't watched the first video, then please watch that before, or else you won't understand why I am referring this guy as JVM and that compiler as your mom. Okay? Let's see what happens if the fruit reference variable starts pointing to the vegetable object. Internally it is actually vegetable object. Who is trying to interpret that thing? You yourself. But you want having some different thing. And your query will be, I want some fruits, not vegetables. Now in the technical terms, JVM will throw an unchecked exception known as class cast exception. So let's say in the editor. So first I will use the same code. So food will point the vegetable object. So internally my object will be a vegetable object. So it will be fruit and then food. The food will refer to the vegetable object. Now the first compilation checking will be done. Is there any typecasting issue? No. The food and fruit has a parent-child relationship, so there will be no compilation issue. Again, the second compilation issue will also be checked. This is also fruit type. This is also fruit type, right? This is also fruit type. This is also referring to the fruit object. Now the JVM will internally check that what is actually the object. The food reference variable is actually internally pointing to the vegetable object. So can this fruit reference variable hold the reference of the vegetable object? Obviously not. That's why the class cast exception will occur. If you remember, we have the same exception in the first video. I told you that I will show that later on. This was the reason. So let me compile and run this. Before that, let me clear my history. Typecasting.java. You can see the first and the second compilation check is properly done. It happily compiled. Next and after that, I will run the code. You can see immediately there will be a runtime exception by saying class cast exception. Vegetable cannot be casted to fruit type. So now are you in the position to understand this whole topic of object typecasting? Don't worry, we will use some more test cases to understand it better. So that means this line will never execute. So what is our last conclusion? Runtime object of food must be same or derived type of fruit. But since there is no relation between vegetable and fruit, so it will throw the runtime exception. Okay friends, now let's understand few more use cases of object typecasting. So as you can see here, the fruit class and vegetable class are the child classes of food class, and similarly the carrot and cabbage are the child classes of vegetable, and orange and apple are the child classes of fruit. Now we will use these test cases to understand this object typecasting better. So what I have taken here, the fruit reference variable is actually pointing the apple object. Now, what is apple object? I've already created some classes here. These classes were already formed from before. Vegetable and fruit were extending the food class. Now carrot is a vegetable, so it is extending the vegetable class. Similarly cabbage also. And apple and oranges are extending the fruit class. So what I have taken here, the fruit is the parent class of apple class. So parent class reference variable can hold the child class object. Now let's see the first test case. Is there any relationship between apple and fruit? Yes, there is a parent-child relationship between apple and fruit. So the first compilation check will succeed. In the next compilation check, the compiler will see that in the right hand side it is an apple object, and in the left hand side it is an apple reference variable. So will there be any compilation issue? No. Now here comes the JVM. Now JVM will see this object is actually internally pointing to the new apple object. So that means there will be no runtime exception this time. So let's save this, and you can see there is no compilation error. Both the compilations are successful. And now let me run this. You can see all the 3 lines are printed successfully. Now does that make sense? Yes. Okay, now let's move to the next test case. You can see the ID itself is pointing that there is a compilation error. I hope you have remembered all the 3 rules there. What were our conclusions? The compiler will be having the 2 compilation checks, the typecasting and the assignment. And then the JVM will do the 3rd check at the runtime. Now let's see the second test case. See, the fruit is actually pointing to the apple object, and we are trying to typecast it into the vegetable type. So is it possible? Fruit cannot be converted to vegetable because again they are not same. So we will get a compilation error. Incompatible types again. Fruit cannot be converted to vegetable. Now let's see the third test case. So again, is there any parent-child relationship? Yes. This is also fruit, and we are trying to typecast to the fruit object. So there is no typecasting issue. Is there any assignment issue? On the right hand side, the compiler is seeing the fruit object. On the left hand side also, the fruit variable is there to hold the reference of fruit object. So there is no problem. So is there any problem at runtime? The fruit is actually internally pointing to the apple object. So basically what JVM is doing, JVM is treating this whole thing as new apple. Writing this thing and writing the previous one is actually same, because internally JVM is treating like this. So the parent class reference variable is able to hold the child class object. So there will be no issue. Let me compile. You can see it compiles fine. Let me run this. You can see apple is printing because this is actually pointing to the apple object. Now let's see the fourth test case. Here the supermost parent class, that is the food class, is taken as the reference variable. In the right hand side, is there any typecasting issue? This is also a fruit. This is also a category of fruit. So there is a typecasting issue. Is there any assignment issue? Compiler is treating the whole as an orange object. And in the left hand side, we have the reference variable of superclass, which is food. So there will be neither any compilation issue nor any runtime issue. Let me compile it first. There is no issue. Let me run this code. You can see there is no problem. Now let's see the last one. So is there any typecasting issue? Because this is actually fruit, but this is actually vegetable. Obviously again the same issue. So forget about runtime. It won't even compile. The compiler will stop this at the first stage only, which we saw in the conclusion 1. So let me compile this again. Again, you can see incompatible types. Fruit cannot be converted to vegetable. Okay. So friends, if you remember these 3 conclusions, I'm pretty sure that you will not have any issue in object typecasting. Even without code editor, you can check it manually also. So friends, this is all about object typecasting. You can suggest me more topic like this. I can actually make video. And friends, if you have reached till this, then please like the video and subscribe to this channel.